Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, doing good. How are you guys doing?
I think as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them. But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It seems like
OBS
everyone.
sucks.
Yeah, it seems like everyone who was here prior to the crash is
Here
seems to be
again.
coming back in.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yep. I got
You might
it.
have an issue with your audio.
You're good. I fixed it already. They're behind us. Well, yeah. OBS sucks, but we're here. We're here again. So I still don't have zoomies. I like having zooms. Like I could zoom, but I can't. It won't let me zoom other places. Why?
Okay. Well,
Why?
we'll do whatever. So.
All right. Well, you had these two stories.
So yeah. So I'll repeat. Before we start, Desert Mantis asked, can you explain, since you're the tech guy, what is OBS?
Open broadcast software is what OBS is. It is what...
Which is what?
Every Twitch streamer is using. It is what high-end operations at, even normal news is using open broadcast software because it's the best at what it does. The issue is it is open source, open broadcast. Yes, it can sometimes just not work, So you see even Jimmy Dore's stream, I guarantee you, using OBS. I've seen back doors of stuff. I know that's what they're using. And sometimes their stuff just gives up too. So it's like, okay. Then all the people that were at the stream you just had and the stream that you promoted all day, So fun times. But yeah. So Barney.
Yeah. So as I was saying earlier before we crashed, so there's actually a member of the Israeli parliament who is actually not a dick and actually is pushing the progressives in Congress, our Congress, to actually call for a ceasefire in Israel. So this was an exclusive interview by Truthout. So we're going to explore that a little bit. That'll be our first story. And then later on tonight, I know Sabi talked about this and referred to the article that we're going to refer to tonight as well, regarding JFK and what he actually thought of regarding Israel and Palestine back when he was president, which I'll give you a hint, it's totally different from what his nephew thinks
Yeah.
of Israel / Palestine.
Mm.
But we're going to give you a little history as to why, well, essentially how his assassination led to the craziness that we've seen within the Zionist occupation right now. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And what do you have, Reef?
I have Assange appeal updates, and we're going to talk about how you can support that and what's actually going on. I've seen some people slightly get this off base, so we're going to read about it and see what happens. I think I have Kevin Gostola going to tell us what's going on there. And then I've got 9/11. I've got a story called just like 9/11 and how it relates to Israel and how Israel relates to 9/11. I'm gonna pull some clips from Shut the Fuck Up Shitlib, so we're gonna watch some of those. But yeah, otherwise, that's what I got.
Okay. So we have to give our sermon, our weekly sermon. So as you guys know, if you're new, welcome. We love you. Thanks for being here. If you're not new, you know that YouTube, with his shittery, has demonetized the channel temporarily. Hopefully, we should be remonetized next month.
Yeah.
Hopefully, cross your fingers that it does happen, though I am very much more cynical and don't believe they will, but who knows. But either way, we don't do this for profit. We do this out of love and to do our part within the space to spread truth to you guys. That being said, it costs money to do what we do. It takes up a lot of time and resources. So, and most importantly, we want to grow and develop other people who aspire to do this to be a part of the network as well. So, if you are interested in helping us in any way, shape, or form, the easiest and cheapest way, and I say cheapest because YouTube takes 30% of your money to give to us that they haven't given us yet, even though we've been monetized for a year. So the easiest and cheapest way to do that, especially if you're doing one-time donations, is through Cash App, and you can see the link right there. For our Rumble Rockfin fam, you always give super chats there. One-time donations are always appreciated. If you're looking to give on the regular, so meaning like giving a few dollars every single month, please do that via Patreon or Substack. We are probably going to look into building out our Substack awareness visibility come 2024, just to diversify our content and also to, build a community on Substack as well. So be on the lookout for that. But that's another way, especially if you want to support us, either Substack or Patreon, especially if you want to give monthly, will be extremely appreciated. And if Reef goes to the next slide, you could see all these wonderful, beautiful people who are current Patreon and YouTube members. Actually, are they even still members, even though they did not have any idea?
I think, well, no, like Spooky message me and was like, it just canceled my membership. I'm like, yeah, it's because they demonetized us. So I'm betting that in January, if they give that back, all these will just turn back on again, hopefully. But in the meantime, switch that over to Patreon, and that way we don't need that to be a problem.
Right.
So
So thank you to our supporters. So really, this is you guys who have given to us this year, because we've been monetized since the beginning of this year. So, and if we are not streaming next week, that will be our last week before the new year. We just want to give a sincere thank you to you all who are supporting us financially in any way, shape, or form this year. We are grateful for it. But we are looking to grow into next year. So please help us out if you can. Obviously, as we always say, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take care of your communities before you give to us. But if you have some extra money on hand and if you want to donate, we'll more appreciate it. But of course, as we always say, the biggest way you could support us for free is to like our content, share our content, subscribe to our content. YouTube has done its job to, not make us visible at all
yeah.
on the platform. So, so the only way that we're able to grow is through you guys, and so, which has been working, at least for us. So, but obviously we want to grow our network so that we're able to reach more people. So do what you can and help us out with the tweets or whatever and sharing. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate you. And yeah, appreciate your support this year.
You should be able to. Your PowerPoint should still work, I think, right?
Oh.
I do believe so. Should do. Yeah, there it goes.
Okay. All right. Should we get started on our first story?
I think so.
All right. So, as I said, our first story tonight features Bernie a little bit. Kind of shows how much of a cuck he really is. So this is an exclusive interview that was done by Truthout, by Brian Bean. Never heard of this guy before. But he interviewed a parliament member in the Israeli government. Now, let me ask you, is it Knesset or Knesset?
Knesset.
Do you have it? What is it?
Knesset with the K.
Knesset? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if within the Hebrew they pronounce the K. But anyway, so Brian did this interview with this Knesset member who says Bernie Sanders ignored both of my appeals for ceasefire. Israeli parliament member Ofer Kassif is urging Bernie Sanders and other U.S. progressives to pressure Israel towards ceasefire. So you gotta get rid of that, please.
Yep.
So let's see what he gets into. In less than 2 months, Israel has killed more civilians than Russia killed in Ukraine in 2 years. Israeli parliament member Ofer Kassif told me recently, expressing horror at Israel's ongoing onslaught against the Palestinian civilians trapped under Israel's relentless attacks in Gaza. The Israeli government's response to the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas has nothing to do with the well-being of Israelis, added Kassif, who has represented the Democratic Front for Peace and Equality, Hadash Ta'al, coalition in the Israeli Knesset since 2019. Rather, it has everything to do with revenge and preserving this fascist government in power, he said.
Yep.
In this exclusive interview for Truthout, Kassif, who has faced formal backlash since October for decrying what he has described as the Israeli forces' ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, analyzes the roots of the Israeli government's seeming disregard for the Israeli prisoners held by Hamas, and discusses his efforts to persuade progressives within the U.S. Democratic Party to pressure the leaders of the Israeli government to agree to a ceasefire.
Got it. There it goes.
So this is Brian, who's speaking here. The recent temporary cessation of bombing and the prisoner exchange have concluded. Can you talk about the current moment in Israeli politics and a little bit about some of the politics surrounding the families of the hostages? I know there's contradictions and divisions among the families and some conflicts with the Netanyahu government. For example, Israeli Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir was on the floor of the Knesset chastising families when they spoke out against the attempt to reinstate the death penalty. And this is offer here. The Netanyahu government doesn't really care about its own citizens. The assault on Gaza has nothing to do with security. It has nothing to do with the well-being of Israelis. It has everything to do with revenge, a realization of the subjugation plan, and preserving this fascist government in power. Those are the real interests behind this assault. If one wants to really support the Israelis and the security of Israel as a state and its citizens, it must do everything to assist us in dissolving this government, because this government is an enemy of the people of Israel and, of course, an enemy to the Palestinians.
Yeah.
There is a division in the Israeli society and, of course, within the parliament. As you alluded to, Ben-Gvir and his thugs don't care about the lives of anyone. They are Messianic. Before the massacre, some of them even said so in one way or another, some very explicitly. Orit Struk, the Minister of National Settlements and National Missions with Bezalel Smotrich's, sorry, these names, religious Zionist party, said that the land of Israel is acquired by suffering. And in my view, she sees the Israeli hostages way too, merely instruments in the way of redemptions. She initially opposed any move to negotiate on behalf of hostages.
So, fuck those hostages, I guess.
Yes, and we've seen that
over and over and over and over again.
Over again, especially more recently in what was that Israelis.
I mean, don't look into the Hannibal Directive. Don't look into that, because that's definitely fuck the hostages. But you know,
So anyway, Kashir continues. They don't care about human beings at all. Those are Messianic fanatics, bigots. They remind me of the worst of your U.S. evangelicals. They have very similar views. It's not coincidence. They are supported by them. They have very similar views. They don't care about people, about the lives of human beings. They just care about their Messianic nightmare. That division exists in the government, in the Knesset, and in Israeli society at large. A vast majority of the Israelis see the most important objective is wanting to see the hostages back.
Okay. I mean, this is the lie they've told them, that that's what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are three groups in the Knesset that reflect divisions. There's a group of the Messianic right in the Knesset who voted against the ceasefire because for them the lives of people are not important, so they don't care about the hostages. Of course, they will not say it in that sense. But you see the situation you described with Ben-Gvir and others in this terrible, disgusting party in what he said in the meeting at the Knesset with the families of the hostages. They are a tiny group, excuse me, relatively, but unfortunately, they control the government. The other group, which I'm a part of, has called for ceasefire for many reasons. One of which is because the lives of the hostages are more important than revenge. A few weeks ago, I tweeted that if the government of Israel would have loved its citizens more than it hates Palestinians, the hostages would have been at home ages ago. I totally believe that and repeat it. So our group calls for ceasefire, and of course, many of the families of the hostages support this for that reason. Even many families of those who were brutally murdered by Hamas support this. I admire them for their mental power that they do not allow the rage they feel justly to overwhelm them, rather. Wait, is this the right one?
Yeah.
Wait, no, I went.
By the way, I fixed the Zoom.
Okay.
I fixed it.
All right, so let me.
I did it by completely installing a different Zoom plugin. But yes.
Okay. All right. They don't let the rage become revenge. They support the ceasefire, and many of them support the ending of the occupation and reaching a just peace with the Palestinians. They don't let the rage control them and still support peace, Palestinian independence, and ceasefire. This is just one part of the reason because, of course, most importantly, we oppose the violence and call for a ceasefire, also because of the unprecedented death toll and catastrophic destruction in Gaza. But the release of the hostages is also of primary value. This is our group, so to speak. We call for a ceasefire and for the total release of hostages. All. That means release of all Palestinian prisoners and hostages in order to release all Israeli hostages and prisoners who are in Gaza. There is another group that thinks it is possible to continue with the assault on Gaza at the same time to release the hostages. This is contradictory. Excuse me. This is contradictory. Two ideas that are mutually exclusive. If you want to release the hostages, you must stop the fire and exchange prisoners.
Contradictory.
Tory. I cannot read. Anyway. If you don't do that, the chance of the hostages being able to leave and get back home healthy peace are getting smaller by the hour. That's something we'll never accept. We want them to come back home and live a good life. That's the obligation of the government. Unfortunately, the government time and time again proves that it doesn't follow its obligations. It doesn't do what it has to do. We continue to try to pressure it to do what it has to do and has an obligation towards its citizens and residents. But time and time again, the government neglects them, to say the least. It sacrifices them.
Yep.
So, Brian, in regard to the prisoner exchange, I wonder if you could talk about what you think the calculations of the Netanyahu government were. Because it's interesting that they went from declaring total war, which is still ongoing, but it seems like a step back for them to pause, to do some exchange of prisoners, and then go back to it again. What's happening there on the level of the state, and how do you make sense of that? So this is Kashir. Netanyahu is not interested in anything but his own good. That's the only thing that drives him. He knows that as long as this trial goes on, he knows that eventually the chances for him to be put behind bars is very high. Yeah. He is facing 3 serious charges, and it looks almost certain that he will go to jail. So
hopefully.
We've mentioned this.
Yeah.
We've mentioned this weeks ago.
Yeah.
That this is so really Netanyahu really essentially pushing all of this is essentially because he's on trial right now for corruption in government. So this is the perfect little distraction to have people not think about it or talk about it. And then honestly, I don't think we've even talked about it. I know we've mentioned it long ago, but I don't think even people in independent media have mentioned this, that this is
it's one of the many things
that why Netanyahu is really pushing this war.
Yeah, well, and it's also timely because we're willing to support it. We've got to get out of Ukraine. So, there's a lot of things that line up as far as, there's a lot of puzzle pieces in this game. So they all have their own motivations. Some of them align, but, plus this has been going on forever. It's just, you might as well make it loud now as opposed to quietly. So, especially if you need a distraction. And I don't know, every president that's ever, you want to get reelected, start a war. Same thing with Bibi. So,
well, except for Bibi, is that, I would argue
keep power at least.
It just seems right, but it seems, just given what we see in media is that it appears that most Israelis are for what Netanyahu is doing, when that's probably not the case.
No.
If anything, it seems like the majority are against what he's
No, they protested him last time he was in office. Like, they kicked him out. Like,
Right.
and then they reelected him because, you know, it's like very similar to election coming up. You know, for us, it's going to be similar things. So, but yeah. So,
but anyway, let's continue. This is Cashier
Truthout?
continuing.
Okay.
Yep. I said before that he doesn't care about the lives of Israelis. That's true. But he doesn't care. This is Netanyahu. But he doesn't care about anything else but his own political survival. And as long as he thinks, given the polls and whatever, that the public wants revenge to continue, he will continue with the war, with the murder of innocent civilians in Gaza. In the media, he kept saying that we are going to eliminate Hamas, we're going to destroy them. But once he saw the polls, he realized that for many Israelis, the release of the hostages was one of the main goals.
Yeah.
So he changed his behavior to try to increase his popularity. At the moment, he isn't succeeding, as whatever he does is not popular, and rightly so. I'm happy about this because he has been accused by many families of the victims of being guilty. Not only responsible, but guilty in the killing and kidnapping of those people himself. And I totally agree with them. Netanyahu simply changes his mind from one side to another according to what he thinks the public wants and thinks. That's the only thing that drives him. Not security, not well-being of the citizens, not the lives, not anything more than what he thinks may keep him in power. That's the reason he changes his mind. Total God complex here. And he may do it time and time again, however the wind is blowing. So Brian asks, can you talk about the role of Biden and in the United States in all of this? Response. We all know that in the United States, Biden's under a lot of pressure from the Democratic Party and even by the potential voters of the Democratic Party, and we are less than 1 year from before elections. Biden knows he may lose those elections. I read recently in the New York Times that a huge amount of so-called orthodox Democratic voters are now saying they are not going to vote in the presidential elections because they will not vote for Biden because of his support for the genocidal assault in Gaza. I'm sure that Biden is aware of that and he thinks about that. In that sense, he must make the most vague impression that he is trying to calm down the situation in general and the government of Israel. I'm very disappointed with the so-called progressives within the Democratic Party as they are not raising their voices enough. I appealed twice to Bernie Sanders, who never answered. And others, I don't hear them enough. On the other hand, I am very happy about Jewish Voice for Peace, who are doing tremendous, wonderful work. I salute them and really admire what they've been doing.
So
I'm afraid
Bernie fucking up again, getting direct, like, you know, like literally this guy's sending him letters. Please do something.
Yeah.
And Bernie's like, nah. So,
well, I wouldn't say no. I think he's starting to about ceasefire now, but it's still kind of tepid.
yes.
And then with the squad, you know, like they call for a ceasefire, sure, but a lot of their voting recently has not really matched kind of the rhetoric that they're saying towards the ceasefire now.
Yeah.
So, and as I keep saying, really we should be calling for a divestment of Israel. Like that should be the ultimate thing. But the ceasefire literally is just really the compromise in the because
yeah, I mean
no
it's
stopping.
I mean it's get rid of the, you know, Jewish state at this point, you know, and let them make some new systems. That's not a religious government. But you know, like, you know, I don't know, give it back to the Palestinians. See what they do with it. But
all right. So we'll continue. I'm afraid that there's no real attempt, neither by the Biden administration, the EU, nor by Arab countries, to put pressure on the government of Israel. The consequence of this is that the government of Israel continues with this terrible carnage. This proves that the world states don't really care, as there have been no real practical steps taken. Rhetoric is not enough. I'm afraid that the future is very gloomy as far as Gaza is concerned. We're talking about a terrible death toll. In less than 2 months, Israel has killed more civilians than Russia killed Ukraine in 2 years. The destruction is a
Wait,
total
hold up.
destruction.
Go fucking back. Read that shit again. Like,
in less than 2 months, Israel has killed more civilians than Russia killed in Ukraine in 2 years.
Where the fuck are all those people at that, like, yelled about, you know, the occupying force of Russia, yada, yada. You know, Putin's a madman, yada, yada. 2 years, they've killed less civilians than in 2 months. What was that? What it said? 2 months?
Yeah.
How? With all of our military technology that we're giving them, how?
Well,
this is
you
deliberate.
can argue.
It's no
well,
other.
But you can argue that if Russia did
Mm-hmm.
what they could do,
there'd be sanctions. There'd be like
right.
loads of crap.
Yeah. Well, no, we'll be in World War III right now.
Yeah.
You know, so like, but with Israel, it's okay because we're funding this. So, and then I don't think it's really fair that, you know, Kasif is saying the Arab countries are not getting involved. They don't want to, I will argue they don't want to get involved, especially like Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, because they know that,
in
if we
Yemen, like, they're fucking putting their, like, money's on the table for Yemen, right? Ain't no boats going through that canal right there, is there? Why do you think they want that big Gurion so much? Like, because now they got to go all the way around the Cape, bro. What's down there, Collin? You should know what's down there. Particular group of people that might become captains now. If you look at me, I'm captain now, right? Like those motherfuckers, they're down there. Like, boats now don't like going down those fucking regions because the Somalis, and not just them, they're just the ones with the name, right? But there's plenty of pirating all the way along that coast, especially past the Cape, which is notoriously difficult to go through. Let's talk about that. Like, around the Cape, around Cape Horn is difficult. Like, it is not easy travel. So, like, there is good sea through that little strait. You know? Like, good luck. So, that's going to affect lots of supply lines coming up. Yeah. I guarantee you, if they keep that up. Which is why we're willing to go to fucking war with Yemen right now. That, like, it's literally, they're out there stomping on both those flags. They got their army out there stomping on the Israeli flag and the American flag. In one fell little march, they're marching right on over those. So, okay. Like, y'all wanted World War III, here it comes.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah. I mean, but, you know, vote harder. So,
this is the most election of our lifetime.
It's the most election of our lifetime, Collin. So, you know.
But anyway, let's continue. The destruction is a total destruction, especially in the north. Unfortunately, not only there anymore. And as you said before, they are in the south. They are bombing the southern parts of Gaza, where more than 50% of the people living in Gaza are refugees multiple times over. The infrastructure is totally damaged. I mean, in ruins. No water, no fuel, no medicine, no hospitals are operating. People are starving there. Literally, people are starving. If Israel continues because the world allows it, these crimes will compound. One example is that the people of Gaza are going to suffer from the spreading of diseases. One Israeli ex-general, Giora Eliand, who is supposedly a modest guy, said that part of the policy and strategy of Israel must be spreading diseases in Gaza to bring victory closer. So, ethnic cleansing much?
Yep. I mean, almost like putting poison in water supplies that they have to admit to 20 years later. You know, I mean, we've talked about their desalination problem, right? Like, you know, there's no fresh water. Like, they're controlling that. Like, it's siege warfare. I'm surprised they're not catapulting plague bodies in there. You know? So, I mean, they've talked about fucking doctors are having to do amputations without anesthesia on children. Like, that are hungry and emaciated and no food. Like, how many you think make it through that ordeal, Collin? Like odds are low on that surgery, friend. So, yeah.
So anyway, that may happen because there's no way on. The only way to prevent it is to stop the and to immediately allow everyone, like the World Health Organization, the Red Cross, and all the relevant organizations to get into Gaza and immediately treat people. And of course, infrastructure must be completely reconstructed and so on. I'm very pessimistic about the near future in the short run. I do not see in the short run how the situation of Gaza is going to improve based on the will of the Israeli government.
Well, I mean, you know, they better be careful trying to get that aid in there. People might call them pampered. God forbid. So,
but in the long run, I'm optimistic. I'm sure that in the long run, our alternative will prevail. I'm sure about it. The question is how much blood is going to be spilled, how much people are going to suffer before it is admitted that there's no other way but the way of ending the occupation and reaching a just peace, right? There is a symbiosis. In order to make Israeli lives better, Palestinian life must be better. We'll do our best to make this day come as soon as possible. I wish he kind of mentioned, well, I think he says it here, it won't happen tomorrow, but with the pressure of the international community, with our insistence against the current administration, and against the persecution we face. As you know, I was suspended from the Knesset for 45 days, and my friend and comrade Ada Toma Simeon was suspended a few weeks ago for 2 months, and another Palestinian member of the Knesset, Iman Katif Yassin, was suspended for 1 month.
The Knesset, for those who don't know, is like their Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are under persecution, but we shall never surrender and give up. We will continue our struggle for the benefit of both peoples, of the land, of Palestinians and Israelis, of Arabs and Jews, of everyone. I'm sure that we will win eventually. I'm just afraid of how many people are going to pay the highest price. So yeah. So fortunately, we do have some nut dicks in the Knesset. But it's funny, you know, like this is the first time that we're hearing like this dissent.
Yeah.
And why isn't he highlighted in media? Like, why? Especially since he contacted Bernie directly. Like, why isn't Bernie like pushing this guy and being like, look, here's someone in the Knesset who is calling for a ceasefire. Why don't we follow and take his lead? But I guess, of course, AIPAC and the Israeli lobby is way too powerful that even Bernie is cucking out to them.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
I mean, he's, if you haven't figured that guy out by now, you know, good luck. Like, electoral politics shit. So yeah. Anyway, let us know what you think. Do these things, like and subscribe. Please share. We're heavily suppressed, as many of our brothers and sisters are. So we appreciate sharing directly with friends. Make sure to leave a comment down the doobly-doo. Help us get to 2K. We're getting there. We see you subbing. We appreciate you. So keep doing that till you see 2K subs down there. You know? So yeah.
Anyone on Rockfin or
I can look. There was someone on Rumble. Wishigo said free Julian Assange. We're about to get to that. And no one on Rockfin yet that is chatting, at least. So appreciate the not fake view on Rumble. Look at you. Look at you go. You know? So anyway, you ready for the next one?
I do want to highlight, before we go, I do want to highlight what Doesn't Matter sent in the chat. And he said, I appreciate that video of Kwame Ture explaining that Palestine needs liberation, peace. Once liberation is achieved, then peace can come. Yeah, I think after thinking about it, it took me a minute to kind of process through that. But yeah, I think it's the idea of liberation in the broadest sense means economic wellness, I would say, you know, like encompassing. So if Palestinians are not doing well economically, that's what we need to be focused on in terms of making sure that they are self-sufficient. Thanks, Reef, for highlighting his tweet, actually his chat. But you know, which is obviously
Tony Bananas finally able to catch a live stream. Appreciate you, Tony Bananas. Good looking out. So, but yeah, so this is happening. We're gonna get to this. So keep an eye on your calendar. Set the date for this date. If you're in the London area around this time, please gather outside the Royal Courts of Justice. You can find more info at freeassangeemergencytoolkit.com. So, yeah. So we're gonna read from the dissenter. We're gonna read Kevin Gostola here. And he writes, Day X is here. Assange granted hearing that may be last opportunity to stop extradition. Right? So the United Kingdom's High Court of Justice granted WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange a final appeal hearing that will be held on the February of 20 and 21st. Right? So that's what? 2 months away, pretty much?
Yep.
So right at the end of February. So here's Stella Assange, right? She writes, Day X is here. The public hearing at the Royal Courts of Justice will be on the 20 and 21st of February. It may be the final chance for the UK to stop Julian's extradition, right? So she tells you to gather outside the court at 8:30 a.m. on both days. Okay. So Kevin Gostola writes, the UK's High Court of Justice granted WikiLeaks Assange a final appeal hearing, right? Stella Assange, who is married to Julian, posted an announcement. Excuse me. Day X is here. It may be the final chance for the UK to stop Julian's extradition. Gather outside the court at 8:30, right? It's now or never. So Julian Assange has been jailed at His Majesty's prison Belmarsh for the past 4.5 years. Over the past year and a half, he has endured another difficult stretch of legal limbo. The same court that will hear Assange appeals denied the WikiLeaks founder hearing in early June. Assange legal team submitted what is known as their grounds for appeal in mid-July 2022. The High Court waited nearly a year to simply refuse to give Assange a hearing. By denying Assange a hearing, he never had a chance to argue that extradition to the United States to face Espionage Act charges would violate his right to freedom of expression as a journalist. In 2021, the High Court ruled in favor of the U.S. government after they appealed a district judge's decision that found extradition would be oppressive to Assange's mental health, given the widespread inhumane treatment that has been documented in U.S. jails and prisons. That ruling came on International Human Rights Day, right? So, Assange's legal team will pursue their final appeal on much more narrow grounds that were only allowed to submit a 20-page filing to the court for the February hearing. The High Court did not have to grant Assange a 2-day hearing. They could have once again rejected the Assange's legal team's efforts to challenge extradition. It would have potentially given the U.S. government an opening to fly Assange to the U.S. and arraign him on Espionage Act charges before the year ended. If the UK Appeals Court does not block extradition, then Assange may have a chance to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. However, there are swirling questions about whether U.S. authorities would request that UK authorities transfer him to their custody before the Assange legal team could appeal to the Human Rights Court. The February appeal hearing is additionally remarkable because it will just come a few weeks before Super Tuesday in the 2024 Republican presidential primary. Former President Donald Trump, who faces criminal charges in multiple U.S. courts and was president when Assange was indicted on Espionage Act charges, is the heavy favorite to become the Republican Party's nominee. Trump has maintained his silence on Assange. Faced with a Senate impeachment trial in January 2021, he declined to pardon Assange or NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden because he was afraid it would give several Senate Republicans a reason to back his impeachment. As for President Joe Biden and Democrats, the Democratic Party has refused to hold a primary. Biden will be the pardon's nominee. Collin, what happened this week to Donald J. Trump and his run for the White House?
The Colorado Senate removed Trump off the ballot.
Right.
And as we were saying, we said this earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Ho.
Mm-hmm.
You want to speak up regarding what happened to you?
You?
Because people were like, there
Very
were some
similar
people
thing,
in
right?
our space who were making the case, oh, this is actually a good thing. You know, that.
Yeah, no.
First of all, this is the idea that they were able to do this. Well, here's the thing. If it goes to the Supreme Court, they're going to toss that out.
Yeah, like Clarence Thomas has already written the check for this. Like, we're good.
Right.
And to me, this is this right here. This is hey, you better shut your mouth. Like, or your run ain't gonna happen. So, like, that's what this is to me. Because it's not like he needs that particular state. You know?
But it's just, again, I think, it's two things. This, to kind of give Democrats cover to not do anything regarding Assange, especially given the date.
Yeah.
But then, more importantly, it's the idea of, oh, we haven't done shit for people, so we're going to actually try and cheat our way into
one of the
winning.
other candidates was talking to a particular commentator by name of Jimmy Dore. I don't know if you know Obama 2.0 Vivek Ramaswamy, but he was asked on the Dore show how you would deal with Assange, and he said, well, pardon him first day, definitely. Right?
Yeah, right.
That was what he said. What's the issue with that, Care Bear? To pardon him means what? What would have to happen first?
He would need to win.
Well,
He
yes.
would have to be,
But also, more importantly, even if he won, what would have to first for you to even be able to pardon him?
I'm not following.
He's got to be convicted.
Right.
So the rule is call the DOJ, make them drop the charges. That's the thing you do. You have the DOJ drop the charges. Like, he gets out that day if you do that.
Right, but that kind of goes to what I just said. Like he said, Vivek was said, "Oh, I pardoned him." I'm like, yeah, right.
Right.
So
yeah, it's you're willing to let him be convicted.
So really what Vivek was saying was bullshit. Really.
Yes. Oh yeah, and among many people who are like, "Well, I'll pardon him." No, it's not just pardoning. You have to drop the charges so that this precedent isn't set. Right? Which is also, what's the other option they gave him? They gave him another option, Assange. We talked about it. Plea guilt.
Which he's not doing.
Right.
Which he's not doing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so as I was saying, this is just a perfect distraction in terms of, well, for Trump as well. Because it kind of takes the heat off of him for a little bit in terms of what he's going through right now. But more importantly, this gives cover for Democrats, especially given Trump, that they know, oh, we haven't done shit for people. So as we were saying earlier, they wouldn't have to go through what they're doing with Trump if they were doing what they were supposed to do. Like, it would just be water under the bridge. But because they have not done anything, now they have to essentially cheat in order to and play dirty in order to try and get by the nation.
I'll own up. I wasn't the one who put those dots together. That was Indy in my ear, being like, hey, that guy, like I watched that guy ain't it, and here's why. And he's heard it from a ton of people. And like, no, pardoming's dumb. Like, if convicted, then yeah, absolutely pardon him. But before then, so, and we're going to get to some other options here in a bit, but, so as for President Joe Biden and Democrats, the Democratic Party has refused to hold a primary. Biden will be the party's nominee, right? We know this. So the Israeli government's war on Gaza, which the Biden administration has wholeheartedly backed, has killed more than 70 journalists. The number's even way more than that now. I think it's like in the 80s. So the tacit support for a cruel military siege against over 2 million Palestinians has cost Biden in 2024 general election polls, suggesting how he might perform against Trump, though that does not mean that Trump is any less supportive of the war. Okay, all Trump's got to do is shut the fuck up, though.
Right.
That's all he's got to do. As one person being bad, you shut the fuck up. People assume, So
I just wonder, though, if Trump is able to help himself.
It depends. It depends on how he handles that, So, and some people will still take him over someone else already. Yeah. So it's like, if people were aware, we're going to get to that in our next, in my next story for sure about Trump's ties to Israel, but we'll get there. So an unprecedented trial involving Espionage Act charges against a publisher, which have openly condemned by nearly all reputable civil liberty, human rights, and press freedom orgs in the world, would likely undermine some of the Biden's campaign message. After all, it is hard for Biden to argue that he is the only candidate who can prevent Trump from further destroying democracy and freedom when his administration has steadfastly backed the extradition of a journalist. How can Biden speak about the way in which Trump and Republicans may undermine and take away Americans' freedom of expression under the First Amendment when a trial against Assange could blow a massive hole in this core liberty? Not to mention, it is now known that government agencies under Biden pressured social media platforms to censor posts expressing alternative views. Right? So, those who care about freedom of the press and the much more broader case of human rights have a moment to force an outcome that could spare Assange. Political pressure may grow in Congress, but the slow, grinding gears of the UK legal system might delay an outcome again. After the hearing in February, what stops the High Court from waiting until late 2024 to deny Assange's appeal and grant ultimate approval for extradition? It seems possible that Biden and Trump might not have to worry about Assange getting in the way of their presidential campaigns, and that would mean another year of detention at Belmarsh and still no end in sight for this political case. So that's why they're doing this now.
Yeah.
Right? So just so that they could, if they wanted to, hold him longer.
Yes.
He's been in limbo now for, years and years and years and years. So, yeah. Bad. So what you can do, though, is if you're in London, gather outside the Royal Courts of Justice on the 20th and 21st. Here is some potential guests, right? Kathy Vogan, Kevin Gostola, Stephanie Marizzi, Craig Murray, Gabriel Shipton, Stella Assange, Murdoch Cadell, Halo Benson, D&V Free JA, right? George Galloway, Roger Waters, Credico Randy. So all your favorites are going to try to show up to this. Also, if you go to Misty's Twitter, there will be tweets suggesting you to call the DOJ, right? And their numbers are there for you, or just look up the numbers to the DOJ and give them a call. Definitely on these dates, which I'm sure Misty will do, and you will see those that day. But yeah, we got to put pressure again. And even then, that's a long shot. So, we got to do something though. So, but anyway, speaking of doing something, again, Kevin Gostola, judge rules Assange visitors may sue CIA for allegedly violating privacy.
Didn't you report on something similar, if not exactly like this?
Well, it was they brought the suit up, and now the judge rules they can.
Okay.
Right? So
it's an update.
Yes. Okay. But I wanted to bring it up because another member of INN decided to sue the FBI. So for very similar overreach. So if you look up, Tara has an article in RT about how she's going to do that. So go look that up. But a federal judge ruled that 4 American attorneys and journalists who visited WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange while he was in the Ecuador embassy in London may sue the CIA for their role in the alleged copying of the contents of their electronic devices. Collin, have we not talked about what? Do you remember this? Copying the contents of electronic devices? What does that sound like? We're in the UK. You remember?
No,
little bird.
No, but
little birdie boy, little spooky
parrots?
bird. Phantom parrot. You're getting there. Yep. So, so technically that's still illegal for us, right? Although the Patriot Act can make that a little fuzzy, right? But the Americans sufficiently alleged the CIA and Director Mike Pompeo through the Spanish security company UC Global and its director David Morales violated their reasonable expectation of privacy under the 4th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Richard Roth, attorney for the 4 Americans, reacted, "We are thrilled that the court rejected the CIA's efforts to silence the plaintiffs, who merely seek to expose the CIA's attempt to carry out Pompeo's vendetta against WikiLeaks." In August 2022, 4 Americans sued the CIA and Pompeo: Margaret Ratner Kunstler, a civil rights activist and human rights attorney; Deborah Herbeck, a media lawyer who represented Assange or WikiLeaks; journalist John Goetz, who worked for Der Spiegel when the German media organization first partnered with WikiLeaks, don't forget that; and journalist Charles Glass, who wrote articles on Assange for The Intercept. Right? Glass, Goetz, Herbeck, and Kunstler alleged that they were required to surrender their electronic to UC Global employees who were hired by the Ecuador government to provide security for the embassy. On June 4, the Spanish newspaper El País reported that Morales had a folder on his laptop marked CIA. Both UC Global and Morales were also sued by Glass, Goetz, Herbeck, and Kunstler. So The United States government moved to dismiss the claims against the CIA and Pompeo. Judge John Kotel of the U.S. District Court in the Southern District of New York granted several parts of the government's motion, but he refused to dismiss a claim related to allegations that the CIA copied their electronics and violated their privacy. So yes, Indy's in the chat saying we covered this story. We definitely did, but we covered it on how do we miss that. And this is essentially an update to that. In an April 2017 speech, Kotel noted Pompeo pledged that his office would embark upon a long-term campaign against WikiLeaks. The plaintiffs alleged that Pompeo and the CIA recruited Morales to conduct surveillance on Assange and his visitors at a January 2017 private security industry convention at the Las Vegas Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Shortly after returning from the Las Vegas convention, Morales created an operations unit and improved UC Global systems to implement the alleged agreement with the CIA. Copying the contents of the plaintiff's electronic devices was part of this alleged agreement. Which, sure. Kotel added, additionally, the plaintiffs alleged that the data collected by UC Global was either personally delivered to Las Vegas and New York City by Morales, who traveled to these locations more than 60 times in the 3 years following the Las Vegas convention, or placed on a server that provided external access to the CIA. According to Kotel, whether Morales and UC Global were indeed acting as agents of Pompeo and the CIA is a question of fact that cannot be decided on a motion to dismiss. In this case, the misconduct alleged is violation of the plaintiff's reasonable expectation of privacy in the contents of their electronic devices under the Fourth Amendment. The government concedes that the plaintiffs had a right to privacy in the contents of their electronic devices. So that already might be a thing here, right? So at a November hearing, Kotel took an interest in the apparent fact that the government had not obtained a warrant to access the content of the attorneys or journalists' electronics, right? A prior decision in Embassy versus Clapper, which challenged the legality of the bulk telephone metadata collection program operated by the NSA, helped Kotel determine that the alleged targeted Americans had standing to sue the CIA. Okay, so that's the new stuff, right? If the government's search of their conversations at electronic devices and seizure of the contents of the electronic devices were unlawful, the plaintiffs have suffered a concrete and particularized injury fairly traceable to the challenged program and redressable by a favorable ruling, Kotel declared. He also contended that the Americans did not have to demonstrate that the government planned to imminently use the information that they collected from their electronic devices. So it doesn't matter if they were going to use it or when, or if they were going to use it 3 months down the road. However, Kotel dismissed their additional claims against the CIA, one involving surveillance of the American attorneys and journalist conversations with Assange, one involving photographs of passports and devices that were allegedly taken, and one claim specifically against Pompeo in his individual capacity as a former official. Kotel agreed with the government that the alleged targeted Americans knew Assange was surveilled even before the CIA's alleged involvement. He considered it relevant that they did not indicate that they would not have met with Assange if they had known their conversations were under surveillance. So then it's okay to spy. If you knew where you're going to get spied on, like you knew we were going to do it and you did it anyway, right? That's on you then, right? That's what they're saying. So, since security personnel could have easily overheard their conversations, there was no reasonable expectation of privacy. He also sided with the government when it came to their argument that the Americans voluntarily handed their devices over to embassy security, so they assumed the risk that the passports and devices might be photographed by the government. Importantly, what Kotel ignored is the fact that those who visited Assange could not have known that the security company working at the Ecuador embassy had some kind of off-the-books relationship with the CIA to help the U.S. government target Assange. Assange was the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks, a media organization that routinely performed acts of journalism. The publication of classified documents from the U.S. government upset military and security agency officials enough that they retaliated. That retaliation should not be so easily justified as being a part of protecting National security. Finally, in 1971, the U.S. Supreme Court case known as Bivens created a process for bringing cases against federal government officials for violating a person's constitutional rights. Pompeo was sued under that doctrine. Courts have been extremely reluctant to allow plaintiffs to pursue damages when a case may set a precedent or lead to a court intruding upon national security and foreign policy matters. This case was no different, as Colville refused to allow the Americans to use Bivens to hold Pompeo accountable. The U.S. government, on behalf of the CIA, will likely appeal the decision. Nevertheless, it is a remarkable development because there is a distinct possibility that there may be a civil trial where CIA spying on Americans is challenged, and all while the U.S. government pushes forward with the unprecedented act of putting a publisher on trial for engaging in journalism. Collin, what's the upsides of civil trial? There is one I can think of.
It's open to the public.
Yeah. Yeah. So they could have had this behind closed doors.
Right.
So now it might be public. That might backfire. Hopefully. I hope. Then again, they might know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it could be, public heads on a spike in either direction. So Indy in the chat going, there's no way they're going to allow the CIA to go on trial publicly. They may not have an option. Like this might be the out they felt like they could take. So yeah, I mean, get rid of the CIA would be nice. But yeah, please go, follow Misty on the Twitters at Sarcasm Stardust to get up-to-date news on Assange when she puts that out. She's literally one of the best resources to me. So, anything to add, Care Bear?
No, I mean, I feel like I've known about Assange now just shy of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
3?
Yep.
Yeah, 3. And no progress has been made, in terms of him being acquitted at all or anything like that.
He's been in limbo. They can add more limbo to this.
Right. And we have enough distractions right now. So, so no one's even talking about Assange really at this point. Yeah. Israel has kind of.
Yeah. Talk to your friends about him. Ask how many even know. I mean, I remember back in like during the first vault leaks from WikiLeaks. I remember Jon Stewart talking about it and, the double tap and I remember when all that stuff came out and it was fresh in people's mind and it lost Bush an election.
Right.
So, I mean, it lost the Republicans an election for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's only now a lot of liberals have woken back up after being put to sleep by a Democratic president again, and this is back on the table. And it's partially because elections are coming up. They're more willing to put Assange out there to carrot and stick us to death. So we'll see, but we'll keep you updated here. So make sure to sub to the channel. Like and subscribe, share this out. We appreciate this. Please share this clip. Make sure your friends and family see it. It's an important thing that should happen in the next coming months. yeah, help us get to 2K too. We see those numbers going up, so we appreciate that. You know, you want news that's actually good, stick around. So,
anyone on Rockfin or Rumble?
I will look. There's a couple people watching, so appreciate you over there. Let us know what you think over there on the Rockfin and Rumbles. But you ready to get to your story?
Yep, this is the long one of the week. Well, we try and do at least too short, too long.
Mine's gonna be long for sure.
So this is gonna be long, but I think if you watched Savvy's stream last night, I know she covered this as well. So feel free to let us know, or have any comments. Please tell us in the chat, especially if you watched her stream. We'll try and do some things different. See, but I purposely did not watch Savvy just have my own original take.
No spoilers, right? Yeah.
So, but this is one thing that's actually new. So, Reef brought me this tweet, which was tweeted out by Joe, otherwise known on Twitter as "Shut the fuck up." Shitlib 3.
Yep.
So this is Lumumba Amin. He is the son of former President Idi Amin, who is the former president of Uganda. The third president. So he actually has something to say that actually relates to this article. So if you want to go ahead and play it.
A quick message to the American people. I know sometimes when things are said coming from Africa, people do not tend to take it seriously overseas. But I would just like you to take a minute and listen, because we have been following some of these issues for quite a while ourselves here. What you call the deep state in the US, the deep state with all these conspiracy theories about assassination of your leaders or people disappearing, JFK and all that. Well, the deep state is Israel. And what you call the uniparty is Israel. What you also call the swamp, Israel. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no line said, no line detected.
Right, but
I like how he started off like, hey, there's some people outside of your borders that also pay attention. You know? Like, I think that was a great way to add context to that, for sure.
Yeah. So, shout out to my brothers and sisters in Uganda. I love you guys. But this is from, so to clarify, just so people are unaware, this is an op-ed. Must say that from the jump. An op-ed from Press News. This was written by Rick Sterling. Title, from Dallas to Gaza, the JFK assassination was good for Zionist Israel. What does he mean by that? Let's get into it. Come on. There we go.
There you go.
President JFK was assassinated 60 years ago. If he had lived and won a second term, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict would have evolved differently. Possibly the path toward Israeli apartheid and genocide in Gaza could have been avoided. In his short time in office, Kennedy significantly changed U.S. foreign policy. As documented in the book JFK and the Unspeakable, Why He Died and Why It Still Matters, JFK resisted the CIA and military industry complex in the policies he set regarding the Third World and the Soviet Union. The Vietnam War, the assassination of Indonesia's President Sumarno, and continued hostility to Cuba and the Soviet Union could not have happened had Kennedy lived and won a second term.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
why did it go back one? I thought we fixed it.
I pressed back.
Oh, you okay?
Less well known, Kennedy's policy military and ambitions Zionist Israel. At the time, Israel had only existed for 13 years. It was still evolving, and the course was not set. There was significant international resolve to find a compromise solution regarding Palestinian refugees from the 1948 Nakba. When Israel attacked Egypt and seized the Sinai Peninsula in 1956, the Eisenhower administration demanded Israel withdraw from the captured territory. They complied.
For now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this time, in the early 1960s, prominent Jewish voices criticized the racism and discrimination of the Israeli government. Israelis like Martin Buber assailed Ben-Gurion and noted that at the inception of the state, complete equality with the Jewish citizens was promised to the Arab population. Sure.
Well, this is keep in mind this is Ben-Gurion.
Yes.
Like, so, well, this is someone talking to Ben-Gurion.
Yes.
Guy the canal's named after.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to get to him again later tonight, but yes.
Many influential Israelis realized that long-term well-being depended on finding a just settlement with the indigenous Palestinian population. In the United States, the Jewish community was divided and many were anti-Zionist. The American Council for Judaism was influential and anti-nationalist. The racist and aggressive character of Israel was not yet set in stone, nor was American Jewish support for Israel. When Menachem Begin came to the United States in 1948, prominent Jewish leaders, including Albert Einstein, denounced him. They said Begin, who later became Israeli prime minister, was a terrorist who preached an admixture of ultra-nationalism, religious mysticism, and racial superiority.
Colin, I played you coverage of the Jerusalem conference with him speaking at it on the show before, so we know his kind well here at this channel. So, but yeah, that's it. just that we've heard this guy.
Many American Jews had mixed feelings and did not identify with Israel. Others supported Israel, but based on there being peace with indigenous Palestinians. Interesting.
Peace, but no liberation. Peace, but no liberation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The Kennedy administration sought good relations with both Israel and the Arab nations. Kennedy aimed to extend U.S. influence throughout the Middle East, including with countries friendly with the Soviet Union and at odds with NATO partners.
Yep.
JFK personally supported Arab and African nationalism. As a senator in 1957, he criticized the Eisenhower administration for supporting and sending weapons to France in their war against the Algerian independence movement.
Yep.
In a 9,000-word presentation to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he criticized Western imperialism and called for the U.S. to support Algerian independence. Algerian President Ben Bella, whom France had tried to assassinate and considered far too radical by many in NATO, was given an impressive welcome to the White House.
That sounds really familiar. Cough, Gaddafi, cough.
Yes.
Yeah. We came, he saw, we died. That's shit.
Kennedy changed the previous frosty relations with the United Arab Republic, Egypt, and Syria, led by Gamal Abdel Nasser. For the first time, the U.S. approved loans to them. Kennedy wrote respectful letters to the Arab presidents before he welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Ben-Gurion to Washington. The Arab leaders could see the difference and responded with appreciation. Those who claimed there was no difference with Kennedy ignored that Egypt's Nasser, Algeria's Ben Bella, and other nationalist leaders saw a big difference. In 1960, when Kennedy was campaigning for presidency, he spoke at the Zionists of America convention. He made complimentary remarks about Israel, but also expressed the need for friendship with all the people of the Middle East. He said the U.S. should act promptly and decisively against any nation in the Middle East which attacks its neighbor. And the Middle East needs water, not war. Tractors, not tanks. Bread, not bombs. Kennedy frankly told the Zionists, I cannot believe that Israel has any real desire to remain indefinitely a garrison state surrounded by fear and hate. By maintaining objectivity and neutrality on the Israeli conflict, Kennedy wanted to steer Jewish Zionists away from the racist, aggressive, and ultra-naturalistic impulses that have led to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
The second difference in Kennedy's policy is regarding Zionist lobbying on behalf of Israel. Under the Foreign Agents Registry Act, organizations that promote or lobby on behalf of a government must register and account for their finances and activities. Under Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the Department of Justice instructed the American Zionist Council to register as agents of a foreign country. AZC is a parent organization of who, Reef?
APAC. What else do we know about how's FARA being used now? We have people with direct experience with this, i.e. Tara Reid, i.e. Garland Nixon, i.e. quite a few people that have to, state they're Russian actors, yada, yada, So, but back then it's essentially they made APAC be foreign agents.
Yes.
So, okay. Yeah, that went away.
Very quick.
Yeah.
As documented in detail here, on November 21st, 1962, the Assistant Attorney General wrote to them, the receipt of such funds from the American sections of the Jewish Agency for Israel constitutes the American Zionist Council an agent of a foreign principal. The Council's registration is requested. The emergence of Israeli political influence was also scrutinized in the Senate. Under Senator William Fulbright, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee held hearings in May and August 1963. They revealed that tax-free donations to United Jewish Appeal, supposedly for humanitarian aid in Israel, were being channeled back to the U.S., where the money was used for lobbying and Israeli public relations.
What the fuck does that sound like?
What we're doing right now.
In Ukraine, yeah. And here.
Right.
Okay.
Attorneys for AZC stalled for time. On August 16, 1963, a DOJ analyst case concluded Department should insist on the immediate registration of the American Zionist Council under the Foreign Agencies Registration Act.
Right.
On October 11th, the DOJ demanded that AZC register, and the department expects a response from you within 72 hours.
Yeah.
On October 17th, a DOJ memorandum reports that attorneys for AZC pleaded for not being required to register as foreign agents. Excuse me. They offered to provide the necessary financial disclosures, but that registering as a foreign agent would be so publicized by the American Council on Judaism that it would eventually destroy the Zionist movement.
God forbid.
Yeah, God forbid. As indicated in this discussion, political Zionism was not yet dominant in the American Jewish community and was actively opposed by the American Council of Judaism and other Jewish groups.
I'm sorry. Yahweh forbid. Sorry, I want to make this inclusive.
A third difference is regarding Palestinian rights. Although he was only 44 when he became president, Kennedy had more international experience than most U.S. presidents. In 1939, he spent 2 weeks in Palestine. He described the situations and difficulties in a lengthy letter to his father. He wrote, "The sympathy of the people on the spot seems to be with the Arabs. This is not only because the Jews have had, at least some of their leaders, an unfortunately arrogant, uncompromising attitude, but they feel that, after all, The country has been Arabic for the last few hundred years. Palestine was hardly Britain to give away. So
Okay.
I actually want to make a comment here
Mm-hmm.
that because I think especially within the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of these Israeli Zionist, influences or whatever on Twitter, like they've been saying, "Oh, we're going to Palestine within the next week or two, or there right now,"
Yeah.
and are making comments like in Tel Aviv and whatever else. I've yet to hear. I mean, at best, the place they would go is to the West Bank,
Yeah.
but not to Gaza. And like, where so, the argument is, at least for me, if you're able to go to Gaza, that should give you perspective of what is happening there, that maybe you will not be so open and so quick to necessarily give praise to Israel for things that they're doing, especially given your religion or whatever. Fine. But
and this also goes against the whole concept of a particular nephew of this president saying that my family has always supported Israel. You know? Right. That's just a blatant lie. You lying.
Right.
So at least you're not telling the whole truth.
Right.
So
I think, and I said this on Twitter today, that we're just in America generally, we're just so isolated onto ourselves that generally it's hard for us to kind of picture oppression anywhere else in the world.
Yes.
Unless you go there yourself, or now social media is able to show you. And so, the idea that like people are kind of calling out people who are pro-Palestine as, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic," like this is not happening. We're seeing the video. We've seen the pictures of what's happening on the ground in Gaza and of the West Bank. So it's not like people are not aware. At least in JFK's time, literally the only way you were able to find it for yourself is if you go and be on the ground there. Now you don't necessarily have to do that, although I still feel like it's always helpful to kind of be on the ground and talking to people face to face. But in lieu of that, we have social media. And a lot of people have been able to be a witness to what has been happening on the ground, that they're able to formulate their own opinion of given what's happening.
Which is why they've tried to propagandize this to all hell,
Right.
So,
but
yeah.
But yeah, I think it was interesting how JFK, which actually, just as another aside, also reminds me of what Malcolm X. Like, when he went to Mecca, like, he had a better understanding of what was happening in that region of the world, and he came back.
Particularly Muhammad Ali went to Lebanon. There's very similar stuff all over there. Which, if you're Mike Tyson, please go look at like what your predecessors and mentors did before you start making money for Israel. Anyway, moving on. Gamer for Life said Whitney Webb will be on Jimmy's show Friday. And she's definitely got loads of stories on Assad's connection in the JFK stuff. So definitely go check out her stuff on that. But anyway, to continue.
So in comments that are still true, Kennedy remarks how the Jewish residents are divided between a strongly Orthodox Jewish group unwilling to make any compromise, and a liberal Jewish element composed of the younger group who fear these reactionaries. His analysis is sympathetic to both Jewish and Arab people and addresses the difficulty but necessity of finding a compromise solution. In the early 1960s, the U.S. State Department was not locked into a biased acceptance or approval of Israeli policies. The U.S. supported UN Resolution 194, resolving, in paragraph 11, that refugees wishing to return to their homes at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practical date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return, and for loss of property damage, which, under principles of international law or equity, should be made good by the governments or authorities responsible. This has become known as the right to return.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hold on. On November 21st, 1963, the day before Kennedy's assassination, the New York Times had two news stories that exemplified the discord between Washington and Tel Aviv. A report from the United Nations is titled, Israel Dissents as UN Group Backs U.S. on Arab Refugees. It begins, a United States resolution calling for continued efforts to resolve the predicament of the Palestinian Arab refugees was approved tonight, 83-1. Israel cast a single negative vote. The issue centers on a 1948 resolution whose key section, paragraph 11, concerns the future of the Arabs who were displaced from their homes by the Palestinian conflict. They had been living in the lands bordering Israel. The revised United States text calls on the Palestinian Conciliation Commission to continue its efforts for the implementation of paragraph 11. The second New York Times story is titled, U.S. stand angers Israel. It reports from Jerusalem that Premier Levi Shekol expressed extreme distaste for today for the United States position in the Palestine refugee debate. Israel's anger was conveyed in the strongest terms to the U.S. ambassador. The Israeli government is upset about the American resolution before the committee and by American maneuvers over the issue. Israel was angered and objected because the Kennedy administration was trying to resolve the Palestinian refugee situation, including the right of return.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth and most considerable contention between Kennedy and the Israeli leadership was regarding their developing nuclear weapons. This issue was so secret that crucial documents and letters have only been released recently, such as, I'm sure, included in this, the Ben Gurion Canal. President Kennedy was a strong advocate for stopping nuclear proliferation. After the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, he realized how easy it would be to intentionally or accidentally trigger a catastrophic nuclear war. If nuclear weapons were allowed to spread to more countries, the risk of global catastrophe would be all the greater. It was also predicted that if Israel acquired nuclear weapon capacity, they would become more aggressive and less likely to reach a compromise agreement regarding Palestinian refugees, as we're seeing the Iron Dome.
Mm-hmm.
When intelligence indicated that Israel might be trying to build a nuclear weapon at Dinoma in 1962, Kennedy was determined to find out if this was true, and if so, to stop it. This caused an intense diplomatic confrontation between JFK and Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion.
Yep.
The proof of this has recently been revealed in the exchange of letters between President Kennedy and Prime Minister Ben-Gurion as his successor, Levi Shekol. They're all labeled top secret or eyes only. So, not going to get into that now because there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to skip that. If you want to read that part on your own, the link to the article is in the description. But basically, all you need to know is shit escalated very quickly.
Okay.
So, the tensions between the Kennedy administration and escalate pressure on the White House. This is revealed in the May 2nd top secret State Department memo regarding White House concern with Arab-Israeli matters. It begins, in recent weeks, as you are aware, it has become increasingly clear that the White House is under steadily mounting domestic political pressure to adopt a foreign policy in the Near East more consonant with Israeli desires. Israelis are determined to use the period between now and the 1964 presidential election to secure a closer, more public security relationship with the United States, notably for a public security guarantee and a cooler, more antagonistic relationship between the United States and the United Arab Republic. This fascinating memo shows Israeli influence in U.S. foreign policy and electoral politics, even back then. It further indicates Kennedy's effort to mitigate this influence while standing firm on stopping nuclear proliferation. After LBJ became president, U.S. Mideast policy changed significantly. LBJ told an Israeli diplomat from the start, "You have lost a great friend, but you have found a better one." The Israeli publication Haaretz said, "Historians generally regard Johnson as the president most uniformly friendly to Israel." Basically, being his bitch. Yeah.
Yep.
The
Who would have
Washington
thought?
Report on Middle East Affairs writes, Lyndon Johnson was first to align U.S. policy with Israel's policies, and up to Johnson's presidency, no administration has been as so completely pro-Israel and anti-Arab as his. On the crucial issue of the Denoma inspection, the Israelis ignored JFK's condition, and the reactor went critical on December 26. When the inspection occurred 3 weeks later, they could not inspect the areas that had been eradicated. A handwritten comment on the report says, "We were supposed to see this first. We do not know what would have happened if JFK had been in the White House, but given the intensity of his effort and deep convictions regarding the dangers of nuclear proliferation, it would not have been ignored as it was under LBJ." Under LBJ, relations with Egypt deteriorated. The U.S. stopped providing direct assistance to Egypt. The U.S. became increasingly antagonistic to President Nasser, as decided by the Israeli lobby. U.S. support for a resolution to the Palestinian refugee issue decreased and then stopped. The Department of Justice's efforts required the American Zionist Council to register as foreign agents became increasingly weak until they were dropped under LBJ's new Attorney General, Nicholas Katzenbach. The sequence of exchanges includes: on December 11, 1963, the AC attorney wrote to the DOJ saying, "Our client is not prepared to register as an agent of a foreign government." Instead, he proposed to provide voluntarily the required financial information.
Yep.
In January and February 1964, there were more exchanges between ACC and the DOJ. ACC expressed concern because the American Council of Judaism publicly said that ACC was acting as propaganda agents for the State of Israel and that the Jewish agency was being used as a conduit for funds for the Zionist organization in the United States.
I mean,
in the summer of
AIPAC.
AIPAC, yes.
Yeah.
ACC is the parent company of AIPAC.
Yeah. Like it is, and it's doing the same job.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the summer of 1964, Katzenbach became Attorney General. Negotiations continued. DOJ staff noted that ACC was stalling and not providing acceptable information despite the increasingly special and favorable treatment. In the spring of 1965, the DOJ accepted that ACC was not required to register as a foreign agent. The financial information was kept in a unique expendable folder. In November 1967, the American Israel Affairs Committee, AIPAC, applied for federal tax exemption. The U.S. Treasury Department granted it, but it's backdated to 1953. The successful development of nuclear weapons added to Israel's of the Palestinian refugee crisis. With intelligence information provided by Washington, surprise attack on Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in June 1967. The Six-Day War was a crucial turning point in Middle East history. Israel quickly defeated the unprepared combined armies. In the West, public perception of Israel changed overnight. The mythology of Israeli military general superiority was created. Among the American Jewish population, doubts and concerns about Israel evaporated and support skyrocketed.
Yep.
Israeli leaders' arrogance and deceit are exemplified by the attack on the USS Liberty during the Six-Day War. The Communications Navy vessel was monitoring the airways in the Mediterranean when it was attacked by Israeli aircrafts and boats. 34 U.S. sailors were killed and 172 injured. Amazingly, the ship managed to stay afloat. The plan was evidently to sink the vessel, blame it on Egypt, and consolidate U.S. support and hostility to Egypt and the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
Lyndon Johnson overruled the calls for help from the vessel, saying, "I will not have my ally embarrassed." The deadly incident was covered up for decades.
Uh-huh. And look up the Lavon affair that goes with it. So, if you think that's not what they're willing to do. But, yeah.
We do not know for sure what might have happened had JFK been assassinated. It is possible that Israel would have been stopped from acquiring the bomb. Without that, they may not have had the audacity to launch the 1967 attacks on their neighbors, seizing the Golan, West Bank, and Gaza Strip. If the Zionist lobby had been required to register as foreign agents, their influence would have been moderated. Perhaps Israel could have found a reasonable accommodation with Palestinians in one or two states. Instead, Israel hardened into an apartheid regime, committing increasingly outrageous massacres. As Kennedy warned in 1960, Israel had become a garrison state surrounded by hate and fear. The assassination of JFK ensured Zionist control of Israel, suffering for Palestinians, and permanent instability.
Okay. Well.
I mean,
yep. Sounds like, just put your tinfoil hat on and that way they can't get into your brain and stop you from hearing this stuff.
Sounds like, as you said, a certain nephew needs to look back at his uncle's work.
Mm-hmm. Well, not perfect.
No, absolutely not. So, no, like, he's a Kennedy, but at least in certain issues, he was very good at. I would argue probably in modern presidential history, probably the best at, in terms of trying to, like, he didn't like brush Israel aside necessarily, but he kind of was like, look, as president, obviously I have to work with you. However, there are certain things that need to happen in context of where you're at and in terms of your neighbors. That if you want our help, you need to keep shit under control.
Which is why Netanyahu is on the grassy knoll. So, but yeah, of course. So I'm sure they bought stocks too. We're gonna get to that during that happen. But yeah, it's just
like I said. Go ahead.
No, it's just CIA, deep state. What we talked about at the top of this, right? Like, it's all connected, and it's been connected for a while. So, it's the fun times in the back rooms of Washington.
So I believe, and people in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Rick Sterling is going to be on Savvy's show tomorrow.
To talk about it?
I guess. So confirm that someone in the chat if that's the case. So if that is the case, definitely check him out. Probably will. But I think again it's good to kind of we always try to give some history in terms of like why things are happening as they are. So I think we've mentioned a lot of this in pieces, but given how JFK has been involved in this, and I'm not saying anything, but it looks very sus. That all of this is going on, and then he got assassinated. Like it does seem to be.
And
vicious.
That's what they always talk about. That the first thing you get shown as president is the other angle of the Zapruder film. Like that's pretty much classically right. So it's definitely been a threat. Like, but. Yeah, even if it wasn't them, they took advantage of it for sure. Almost like another thing that we're gonna get to. But don't forget to do these things: like, subscribe, make sure you share. We appreciate all you can do to get this directly to your friends and family, make sure to leave a comment. We want to know what you think. So help in, get to 2K subs. We're getting there. Not too long. 300 of you hit that button, and we'll be right there. And I get to change this slide. So, but yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Let's check. I thought I put my
Rumble.
Yeah, let me do that and also pull up Canva because apparently that didn't get put in. So people jumping into the chat now that DD's over. Pull this up and drag this over. Yeah. And you said Rockfin and Rumble, right? Look, Ghost Start, yes. Whitney Webb on JDS Friday. He's telling us over there on the Rumble. Good for you. Look at you doing it on the Rumbles. Rockfin's still got to get some people in there chatting. But yeah, let me pull up this story. So, Care Bear.
Yes, sir.
Who did 9/11? 9/11.
9/11.
Yay!
9/11 was bad.
It was bad. So we're gonna get into that. So I can close this now and back to here. So friend of the show, Kit Clanbig, over here at Mint Press News. Just like 9/11, suspicious Israeli stock market activity hints at foreknowledge of October 7th attack. Now, we've alluded to this during the show when this was going down, that we felt like they at least knew what was happening before this happened, right? Now there's some numbers that help us out with that, right?
The numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you.
Yeah, they do. So here we go. A new academic study has made a shocking and highly controversial finding. Suspicious Israeli stock market activity in the days preceding Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on October 7th indicates that a particular party had foreknowledge of the impending attack and used that information to directly profit from the panic that ensued. The paper, authored by Robert J. Jackson, Jr. of New York University School of Law and Joshua Mitz of New York University School of Law, both of which pretty good schools, wouldn't you say, Care Bear?
I would say so, yes.
Concludes that based on a significant spike in short selling of listed Israel companies, persons unknown were aware the operation was impending and sought to profit illicitly. Short selling or shorting allows traders to bet a stock will perform poorly and reap rewards if they're correct. We're going to get into some detail of that in a bit. So, shorting is a relatively rare practice compared to traditional trading, and with good reasons. Losses can be vast if forecast poor performance doesn't materialize. Okay? And many investments advisors warn against engaging in the practice under any circumstances. Strikingly, though, the academics found shorting of Israeli companies in days immediately before October 7th, far exceeding short selling that occurred during numerous other periods of crisis, including the recession following the financial crisis, the 2014 Israeli-Gaza war, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Colin, what else do you know about shorting? There was a big bit of news not that long ago. Do you remember this? Particularly AMC movie theaters. That was shorting. So,
well, I don't know the term, but I do know, like, especially with COVID.
Yes.
Now I've got to be careful what I say.
Yeah. But more importantly, was Wall Street Bets. You know about them?
Yes.
Okay, so that was them fucking up the shorting. Right? The shorts were already there. All they had to do was buy stocks in the company that was shorted. so that the company had growth. And then those shorts get fucked and they lose billions of dollars. Right?
Right.
So the pair argue this activity may reflect attempts by Hamas operatives to profit from, if not outright finance, their forthcoming attack, an allegation eagerly taken up by Hebrew newspaper Haaretz. Meanwhile, Israeli finance rag Globes attacked the study, claiming huge error by its authors in overestimating the profits of individuals who shorted Israeli stocks. The pair mistakenly quoted returns in agorot, a denomination of Israeli currency, as shekels, and pennies as dollars in U.S. terms, leading them to inflate investor returns by a magnitude of 100. Okay? That's what they're saying. So, yet the outlet acknowledged a consistent rise in short trading balances on Israeli shares prior to the outbreak of the war. Moreover, the Israeli government had taken the paper's findings so seriously that an official investigation had been launched to ascertain the truth. As we shall see, there is good reason to believe that if someone sought to enrich themselves due to foreknowledge of Operation Al Aqsa flood, it is likely they were connected to Hamas. This is why they're like, oh shit, someone made money. They're probably wanting some of that. But the paper notes numerous historical precedents for such activity, which occurs in gaps in U.S. and international enforcement of legal prohibitions on informed trading. Research on profitable trading on the basis of information about coming military conflict is an underdeveloped academic field. Such lack of oversight and scrutiny around shorting by Western regulators and watchdogs may explain who profited this time and why. The academics conclude our evidence is consistent with informed traders anticipating and profiting from the Hamas attack. Concerns about the paper muddling up profit totals aside, this finding is highly persuasive. Multiple data sets reviewed therein ample show and indeed significant spike in short selling in the immediate lead up to the Operation Al Aqsa flood, and a supremely suspicious one at that. For example, the shorting of dozens of Israeli companies listed on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange increased dramatically before the attack. One firm alone saw 4.43 million new shares shorted from September 14th to October 5th. That's not that long, Collin. Couple months, right? So on U.S. exchanges too, there was a sharp and unusual increase just before the attacks in highly risky short-dated options being placed on Israeli stocks, which expired almost immediately after the attack started. So there's that graph, Collin.
Look at this graph.
So look at this graph with me, right? September 4th, right? We go to September. So where's that attack at, right? Going to be way over here.
Yeah.
Off the chart. So this is that. Look at this big spike. Literally at the start of October 1st. Bing, bang, boom. Right up there. 100% short volume. Right? So Desert Manta saying this looks like my last EKG.
I hope not.
I think your rhythm is a bit irregular there then. So similarly, on October 2nd, the shorting of the MSCI Israel Exchange Traded Fund ETF, a passive investment vehicle tracking the performance of the Israeli stock exchange overall, suddenly and significantly spiked. For context, the authors note this was the 30th highest daily shorting volume ever experienced by the ETF over the 3,570 trading days leading up to Operation Al Aqsa flood. In other words, it was one of the biggest bets on poor Israeli stock exchange performance since 2009. The shorting far exceeded the shorting of Israeli stocks at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, which briefly produced one of the biggest international stock market collapses in history. In March 2020, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 2,000 points, effectively vaporizing trillions of dollars from the global economy in the biggest ever fall in intraday trading yet recorded No wonder the authors conclude it is extremely unlikely that the volume of short selling on October 2nd occurred by random chance. Okay? Another particularly compelling finding in the identification of similar patterns in trading of the Israel ETF in April 2023, right when it has since been reported Hamas was planning to execute a similar attack. The strike would have followed what transpired in October closely, but was canceled after Tel Aviv publicly raised its national alert level due to Israeli intelligence agencies catching wind in advance. Almost like they were on their radar, right? Where have we heard that before? So, look at this graph, Care Bear, right? Short volumes. January, April, whop, right? October, whop, whop, whop. Just all these big spikes here. Okay? So, just to reiterate, short selling a stock is when a trader borrows shares from a broker and immediately sells them with the expectation that the share price will fall shortly after. If it does, the trader can buy the shares back at the lower price, return them to the broker, and keep the difference minus any loan interest as profit. Just for a little more detail on how that works. The attack was timed to start on the eve of Passover, April 5th. 2 days earlier, the shorting of the Israeli ETF peaked at levels very similar to those observed on October 2nd. The record volume was far higher by an order of magnitude than other days prior. This evidence strengthens the interpretation that the trading observed in October and April was related to the Hamas attack rather than random noise. Exactly who is behind this activity isn't yet clear from publicly available data. Their identities will nonetheless be known by the U.S. Financial Industry Regulatory Authority and the Securities and Exchange Commission, aka the SEC. The paper's authors suggest these agencies delve deeper to understand why and how financial markets may have anticipated the events of October 7th. So let's get back to what we started at the top of this talking about, which is 9/11, right? So far, there's no sign of an official probe being launched stateside, although there are precedents for such action. As the paper records, following 9/11, the SEC looked extensively into whether particular market dynamics before that fateful day reflected advanced knowledge of the attacks. 3 years later, though, the commission reported it had not been able to develop any evidence suggesting that anyone who had advanced knowledge of the terrorist attacks sought to profit from that knowledge. Of course they didn't. The academics add that since then, 3 separate academic papers have probed the same issue, pointing to very different conclusions. In 2006, University of Chicago professor Alan Poteshman concluded the activity examined by the SEC was consistent with informed investigators having traded in advance of the attacks. In 2011, an international study team identified abnormal trading indicative of insiders anticipating the 9/11 attacks. In 2015, researchers from the University of Zurich confirmed unusual airline, bank, and reinsurer stock trading before 9/11. Okay? So, enter INN member, shut the fuck up shitlib3, aka Joe. Right? Do you ever get a chance to watch this today, Care Bear?
No.
Okay, so don't worry. I brought some snippets for you. I have the link to this in the description below. It's all the way at the bottom. Scroll down there. Watch this whole thing. It's 30 minutes. I mean, obviously, watch us first, but then go watch the full thing. But we're gonna watch some bits of it, and we'll get your thoughts, Care Bear. So let's start with this one. Let me full screen. Hello.
Let's talk a little bit about Israel.
That was Chucky the Shoom, by the way. But this is BB.
Saddam is hell-bent on achieving atomic bombs, atomic capabilities as soon as he can. There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. No question whatsoever. No question whatsoever.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
Sure they do.
Working with Israel to oppress the people of the planet. Order out of chaos, bringing the world crises, bringing them terrorism, so we'll accept a highly dictatorial police state regime. It's happening. We're going to have nuclear war because Israel likes to go around bombing everybody.
Alex Jones from 2001.
Now I'm going to talk about the Israeli connections to 9/11. Now, these were the strategic goals of the father of Israel, Ben-Gurion, who was another Rothschild employee. He said in 1948, after Israel became a state, he said we should go on the offensive and smash Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and then take out Jordan, Syria will fall, and if Egypt dares to resist, we'll bomb Cairo. This is the Prime Minister of Israel 1 week after the nation became a state. This is, of course, what Israel did to the United States. Many people will say, oh, Israel wouldn't do that. They wouldn't attack us.
You know, back in the 1960s, they bombed the USS Liberty knowing it was one of our ships because it caught the radio chatter of them killing thousands of Palestinian children during that invasion, and they torpedoed it as they begged for hours on the radio, and LBJ sat there in 63 and let them do it. That's in this Baltimore Sun story.
Consequently, the Israeli terrorists even attacked American targets in 1954 in what is now known as the Lafon Affair, which occurred in Egypt. Israelis bombed American buildings there in an attempt to pin the blame on Egyptians, hoping America would then wage war against Egypt. In June of 1967, the Zionists bombed Jerusalem, murdering over 300 civilians and killing entire families.
When I found out what they do, shooting little Palestinian children in the genitalia and laughing, it's on video. Little 10-year-olds walk around throwing rocks at tanks. A guy sits off a half mile away and blows their testicles off. They call them goyim. They call them dogs. They call the Arabs cattle.
So that was Alex Jones. In 2001, I know he has some different views now from what I hear, but back then had shit right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Indy's telling me that links are screwy because YouTube hates us. So this is Joe's pinned tweet on his Twitter. So if you go to @STFUShitlib3 on Twitter, this is right at the top. So give it a watch-sies. But you ready for the next one?
Sure.
I think I have 4 of these. They're short. So if you're on Rumble, which some of you are, go start telling me a couple of weeks and not a couple of months, as I missaid earlier. So here we go. Let's see what the Zionists had planned back then.
For the new Pearl Harbor. This was planned in advance. This man, Philip Zelikow, had a catastrophic terrorism study group in which they were imagining the transforming event that would change this nation.
I think this man is Richard Gage, by the way, the one speaking, who is a architect for, he runs the architects for 9/11 Truth, I do believe. So here you go.
This was published 2 years before 9/11. Another one of the authors was Ashton Carter, top left, and the man with the blue sweater. These are Rothschild agents. These men, when they wrote that paper, were working for a group called Global Technology Partners, which is an exclusive affiliate of Rothschild North America. Their whole business is getting onto the gravy train of American defense spending. That's where the money is. They take the money from us, they put it into war, and the Rothschilds profit from it. And another group was PNAC, Project for a New American Century. They said that the process of transforming the American military into this worldwide dominant force would be a long change, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor, which is exactly what 9/11 was meant to be.
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Who's behind it? Well, here we have a picture from the Pentagon. We have something called the Defense Policy Board. These are mostly Zionist men. Here we have Wolfowitz and Rabbi Dov Zakheim across the table, and the Israeli boy Douglas Feith, and they're sitting right next to the Israeli Chief of Staff in the Pentagon. And he's telling them, well, this is what you should do. And that's what we've done. They advise us, the Israelis tell our Pentagon what we should be doing. Now, a week after 9/11, this General Wesley Clark walked through the Pentagon. And he said, about 10 days after 9/11, I went to the Pentagon. I saw Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz.
One of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to
Democracy
come in
Now?
and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know."
I came back a few weeks later, he said, and by that time we were bombing Afghanistan. And he said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And the general said,
He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way." What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail."
Said, "Oh, sir, it's much worse than that. We're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years."
He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, "I just
count
got this down from upstairs
count 'em,
from the
kids.
Secretary of Defense's office today." And he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with
Iraq, then Syria, Lebanon, Libya,
Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me."
And as you can see, that shopping list is exactly what we've been doing for the past 15 years. Israeli military intelligence created Al-Qaeda. They created the Islamic foe for the war on terror. Because if you're going to have a big war on terror, you have to have an enemy. So they have to create the enemy.
In my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in. You got to catapult the propaganda. Iraq. Iraqi, with Iraq, Iraqi people, Iraq. They were. What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
The story about
Nothing, Collin.
Nothing.
So yeah, a little George W. for everybody. A little remix. Yep.
I miss him in a way.
A little bit, right? I mean, just for the humor.
The humor alone. It's like.
But wait, there's more. Here we go. And action.
Benjamin Netanyahu admits that 9/11 benefits Israel. He said on 9/11 to the New York Times, he was asked, "How will this affect Israeli-American relations?" And Netanyahu said, "It's very good. It will generate immediate sympathy." Who would say it's very good when there are 30,000 people who were thought to be in the rubble dead? A couple years later, he said in Hebrew, speaking to an Israeli audience, he said, we are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq.
What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
Now, what's the connection between Larry Silverstein and the buildings? Well, the Port Authority owned the World Trade Center. The Port Authority was headed by this man, Lou Eisenberg, another Zionist. There were some very convoluted negotiations in the summer of 2001, and the World Trade Center passed to Larry Silverstein. These two men are on the board of the United Jewish Appeal, the largest funding organization for the state of Israel in the United States of America. So it was the Zionist connection that got the building to Larry Silverstein. Larry Silverstein, on July 24th, he got the Twin Towers in his hand, and then he controlled everything about the building. The first thing he did was he jacked the rent up 40% and insured it against terrorism. This is what was left 5 weeks later of the World Trade Center. All that was left was steel and dust.
Elliot Spitzer, an old friend who I knew well. I said, "Elliot, if you don't help me, I'll never collect from the insurance companies."
To the tune of what?
He listened.
$12.3 billion.
And he said, you know what? You're
I
entitled.
thought you were going to play Austin for that.
He was already, I don't even need that. It was Dr. Evil himself already. At 4.6 billion.
Oh, you got to play a Dr. Evil clip for that.
I know, right? I could get to it. It's definitely needed. 12.3 billion with a B, billion, right? In damages, right? When he had already won 4.6.
I'm going to get you the money. And in 6 months, he got me the $4.5 billion.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull. And then we watched the building collapse.
That's building 7.
See what's happening down there. It's a mess. And the developer is actually a friend of mine, but he didn't want to build this building either. If you look back at the records, when it was first foisted upon him, Larry Silverstein is a great guy. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine.
Larry Silverstein is a great guy. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine.
Then
So yes, the duopoly continues to duople. Yep. Is that it, or I got one more? I think that might be it. Yep, that's it. So back to this Kit Clarenberg article, right? To finish up, the question of whether foreknowledge of the 9/11 attacks motivated insider trading was, at the time, treated with the utmost urgency by Western government officials, regulators, law enforcement, and the media. Open source records showed companies adversely affected by the event were abruptly shorted at record levels in the weeks prior, while investments in stocks that stood to benefit rocketed on September 10th. The purchases of shares of U.S. weapons manufacturer Raytheon inexplicably soared sixfold. A week later, their value had almost doubled. The profits involved both ways were huge. As a contemporary mainstream report notes, 5 days before 9/11, over 2,000 short bets totaling 180,000 were made against United Airlines, 90 times more in a single day than in the prior 3 weeks. The company's stock collapsed once the World Trade Center was struck, and the value of the investment skyrocketed to $2.4 million. This was just one example of suspicious activity among many investigated by U.S. authorities. That's just United Airlines. Over shorting one company, $2.4 million in profit were made. Elsewhere, probes into the matter were launched in several European countries and seemingly produced quick results. On September 24th that year, Belgium's finance minister said investigations had already led to strong suspicions that British markets may have been used for insider trading pre-9/11. The same day, Germany's central bank president forcefully declared, "What we found makes us sure that people connected to the terrorists must have been trying to profit from this tragedy." Yet, like the SEC's, these investigations ultimately failed to produce results. I wonder why, Care Bear.
Yeah.
The 9/11 Commission report summarily dismissed this issue altogether on the perplexing ground that individuals identified as responsible for the trades had no ties to Al-Qaeda, which had been previously what, Care Bear? What was the Al-Qaeda called before then? The Brave Freedom Fighters of the Mujahideen. Just in case you watched Rambo.
No.
It literally says that. They changed it now, but the old Rambo literally had like a thing saying like dedicated to the brave warriors of the Mujahideen. But yeah, so a declassified 2003 FBI document assessing suspicious pre-9/11 trades reveals who at least two of these investors were, while providing a likely explanation for why authorities did not aggressively pursue the issue. One of the trades examined by the Bureau was the purchase of 56,000 shares of Stratosec between September 6th and September 10th. The company provided security systems to airports, including New York City's Duals, from where one of the hijacked planes departed. United Airlines, which suffered 2 hijackings on 9/11 in the World Trade Center, its share price almost doubled following the attacks. The trades trace back to Wirt D. Walker III, a distant relative of the Bush family and business partner of Marvin Bush, then President George W. Bush's brother. According to the declassified file, the FBI never bothered to interview him about the trades, ostensibly as their background investigation revealed, no ties to terrorism or other negative information. But ties to what, though, Care Bear? In the wake of Hamas' October 7th incursion into Israel, shock and bewilderment abounded widely. Many reeled at the astonishing intelligence failure, undoubtedly necessary to allow the attack to slip through the most monstrous and deadly concentration camp walls ever constructed. Multiple Israeli and Western spying veterans with intimate insider knowledge of Tel Aviv's modern surveillance and security systems expressed disbelief. Collin, do you remember lines along the lack of imagination during 9/11? That we just had a lack of imagination. We couldn't have imagined any terrorist thing like this. We just couldn't have done it. Except multiple people had imagined such a thing. Yes.
And it happened in a similar way several years before. It obviously didn't. And people forgot this is not the first time that World Trade Center was targeted.
No, in fact, in Joe's video, there's a whole section on that alone. About how Bibi Netanyahu said that next it's going to be a nuclear bomb, which is why they stopped Iran from having nukes.
Like it was targeted. I don't remember the dates, but like I know, like it had to be even like when I was in middle school, high school in the mid 90s.
Yep.
That time it really wasn't.
Kim Jong-un said to look at Iran's agreement during the nuclear accords, right, and to see how we still went in and controlled them, and Israel did this, that, and the other during that, and that's why they need to keep their nukes. Right? Like that's what that guy said. But this is this again, lack of imagination, right? So just craziness. So let alone take the Israeli government by such apparent surprise. Like, there's no way they knew. But meanwhile, they know where every tunnel is and can make detailed animations, like even Hamas operatives themselves were reportedly stunned by their success. They had not expected to be able to push so far into Tel Aviv. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Biden is known for saying that October 7th was 15 9/11s, classically. So, I wonder if his math is accurate. you know what I mean? Like, just in a different way. So, and by the numbers, he might be right. It might be 15 9/11s about all the money these people are making. So, Palestinians and their supporters have reasonably argued that Israel forces are a paper tiger, accustomed since their embarrassing 2006 expulsion from Lebanon to brutal imperialist crackdowns against unarmed civilians and ill-equipped for actual battle against a well-trained insurgent force, which we are seeing day by day that is the case. Right? I know Fee was the one who told me paper tiger. So yet on an almost daily basis since October 7th, report after report has made it abundantly clear that Tel Aviv was given countless warnings and possessed intelligence, meaning its vast security and military apparatus duties should have seen the attack coming. This begs the obvious question of why that didn't happen. To detail just two recent examples, On November 30th, the New York Times revealed how Israeli officials obtained a detailed 40-page battle plan outlining in precise detail, point by point, Operation Alaska Flood, over a year before it happened. Meanwhile, it now seems that mere hours before Hamas struck, Israeli security forces had enough warning signs of what was impending to prepare a response, but did nothing and told no one, including attendees of the Nova Music Festival and its organizers, that Israel then proceeded to shoot with their own tanks. So the author of this article makes no comment on theories that Operation Alaska Flood was actively permitted to go ahead by Tel Aviv to secure pretext for executing the horrific genocide currently unfolding in Gaza. The attack's success may well be attributable to Israel's complacency and a genuine intelligence failure of epic proportions. However, countless indications that so many knew something was brewing for so long, including foreign governments and intelligence agencies, raises the prospect that someone or some individuals with prior knowledge of Operation Alaska Flood sought to capitalize accordingly. While Wirt D. Walker III, for example, almost undoubtedly played no personal role in planning or executing 9/11 or allowing it to happen. No, he would never. His privileged position and connections may have granted him access to sensitive information inaccessible to the average person. Hell of a coinkydink, huh? Al-Aqsa, Indy wants to fix my pronunciation. Probing such connections and information is not something regulators and law enforcement agencies across the Western world are in the business of doing, about which shadowy actors and agencies are, of course, well aware. Tension, unrest, and cataclysmic events worldwide dependently send shares in major defense firms surging and often illuminate the forces responsible, tracking which stocks are suffering, where and when, and whether anyone has sought to profit as a result may be just as incisive. Gabriel, any thoughts?
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes, it is, and it's a lot of dots to connect. Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't want to talk about obviously 9/11. I said this to you yesterday as we were prepping that it will trigger some people. It kind of triggers me still a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it just kind of goes to show. I think even now, 20 years, over 20 years later, like, we still don't know entirely like what really is the deal.
No.
With 9/11, but it definitely seems.
Well, and especially
I'm going to say
Saudi
allegedly,
connections,
right? But I'm going to say allegedly for this, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the Israeli lobby coming into play even in this, and so. But again, we said this. I feel like we say this every week. It's just crazy to see the hand that the Israel lobby has in everything, in terms of foreign policy, in terms even. I hate saying this in this way, but even in terms of our terrorism as well, like,
yep.
War
on terror,
right? Like, where doesn't Israel doesn't have their hand?
Well, we talked about that with the Jerusalem conference, right? Where books made by them, funded by them, with their bad information, passed down through Daddy Bush and Reagan, right? Particularly, I think it's I forget the name of the book. But there was a book passed around the CIA, essentially, where the CIA was all like, this shit's bullshit, but, whatever. And then publicly, they were using it all the time to influence how they were going about doing things, including the Sandinistas and. So, and, fighting the commies, right? Reagan, right. 80s Reagan shit. 90s Bush shit. Early noughties Bush shit. So, now we're here. Obama continued it. Took 2 wars, made them 7. Remember how many countries How many countries did that guy rattle off? What was it? 7? Took 2 wars, made him 7? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure, then we had Trump, and then we had Biden, who's now continuing all that. So, yeah. Hell of a timeline, no? Yep.
And it started in the 60s, more or less. Well, you can argue since the 40s, but really kicked off in the 60s.
Tell us what you think. Leave a comment right down there in that little comment section. Please share. We're heavily suppressed, as I'm sure you could find out with listening to this clip. But like and subscribe. We can only do what we can. Try to get us to 2K. We're almost there. We're at 1.7. So we're getting there. Also, go to Rumble. Subscribe there. You can find all our links, including links to all of our alternative platforms, at indienews.network. So, yeah, anything to say on the way out?
Merry Christmas to all.
Yep. indienews.shop.
Buy our merch.
Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah, which I think might have ended.
Hanukkah's over.
Yep.
It's over.
And then Kwanzaa still happening. I don't know how Kwanzaa works, but sure.
Kind of like Hanukkah. It's kind of.
Okay.
But not until next week. Next Tuesday's start of Hanukkah.
So, yeah, rumble.com/indie news network for Rumble. Indie putting the links in chat. We'll try to get links in our descriptions fixed. We'll figure that out. So, but yeah.
So
follow us on Twitter at GetIndieNews. Indie Saying Angel and Himbo live Friday night. So go check that out. We're not going to be doing one Sunday, I don't think. I've taken Indie's badge and gun for the next couple of weeks. So he's off the force behind.
I'll imagine. Well, politically homeless, we're not sure what's happening with that.
Yep, I think Crab's trying to pull something together, though.
Oh, no, but Monday is Christmas anyway, so he's definitely not going to stream. So no. Jesse's still recovering, so I would imagine no American Edition. We're debating if we're going to do INN News. If we
could take a week off. But
we'll figure it out, and because I am going to be traveling home, so
Misty will be doing stuff all this week and next week, I do believe, other than like 3 days, something like that. So keep an eye out over the holidays, 5 o'clock Eastern, TNT Radio. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So keep an eye on things. Everything's updated on our Twitter. So go subscribe to that if you're not already. But yeah. Anything else, Care Bear? Watch clips, do all that stuff.
Watch the clips.
Yep.
And do all the things, and thank you guys. And if you don't see us again until the new year, enjoy.
Indy wants me to.
What remains of.
Indy wants me to play this.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
So yeah, go follow his Substack.
But yeah, hope you all have a great what remains of the holiday season. Thank you all for your support over this past year. We really have appreciated the growth and the love and the support you guys have given us. And we hope to do more of this in this godforsaken upcoming year. So
yep. I'll bring all the seatbelts for everyone to strap in with. So, but yep, gonna be a fun time anyway. As always, kids, remember, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Bye. Have a good week. And happy holidays, everybody, and all the.
We want to talk right down to earth.
in a language that everybody here can easily understand.